This is the new Audi A6, not to be confused with the A6 e-tron. You see, this is not an electric car, it's powered by petrol or diesel. It's also more practical than the e-tron version and it's cheaper. In this video, I'll be driving the new Audi A6 for the very first time. I'll tell you everything you need to know about it, so stay watching and don't forget to subscribe to the What Car channel for lots more new car reviews, reveals and road trips. Now this is a direct replacement for the old Audi A6, although until a couple of months ago it was going to be called the A7. You see, Audi had a plan where it would use odd numbers for its petrol and diesel cars and even numbers for its EVs. But earlier this year it decided that was quite confusing, which is why this will be called the A6 after all. So this is still very much a BMW 5 Series and Mercedes E-Class rival, and you can have it as an estate or Avant in Audi speak, as we have here, or there'll be a saloon as well. We can't show you what the saloon will look like because it hasn't been officially unveiled yet, but it is actually in that building behind me there. So if you head back to whatcar.com on April the 15th, we'll be able to show you exactly what it looks like. But clearly at the front here, it is going to look exactly the same as this estate version. And obviously it is an evolution of the old A6's design rather than a complete rethink. So you've got this lower grille here. This is an S-Line version, so it gets a dark grey grille. You get a silver grille if you go for entry-level sport trim. And these headlights are just slimmer. In fact, the whole shape of the A6 is just a bit more slippery than before. In fact, Audi says this is the most aerodynamic petrol or diesel car it has ever made. The estate version has a coefficient of drag of just 0.25, which means it's more aerodynamic than a BMW 5 Series Touring or a Mercedes E-Class estate. And the saloon, I'm told, is even better. If you come around to the back here, you will see some thinner tail lights here that are actually separated from the rear light bar that runs across the back here by a gap. That is the first time Audi has used this design feature because formerly, of course, the whole rear light arrangement has been joined up in one big piece. If you go for S-Line trim, you get a slightly different rear diffuser than on entry-level sport trim, but all versions of the new A6 have what Audi calls hot tailpipes. That means they are real exhaust pipes rather than fakes. Anyway, earlier on I mentioned the A6 e-tron, and that isn't just an electric version of this car. It might look similar and be a similar size, but it is completely different underneath. This is based on Audi's new PPC platform, which stands for Premium Platform Combustion. It isn't an entirely new platform, it is carried over from the old A6, but it has been heavily modified to make it compatible with Audi's latest mild hybrid technology. And that brings me on to the engines, because you only get that mild hybrid technology if you go for the 2-litre TDI diesel. It has 201 brake horsepower, you get Quattro 4-wheel drive as standard, and on paper, it can do more than 53 miles per gallon if you stick with the cheaper trim levels, that is. This car doesn't have that engine though. It has the only other option available in the UK at the moment, which is a 2-litre TFSI petrol. Now the good news is it has exactly the same amount of power as the diesel, so 201 bhp, and it drops the price by around £4,300. The bad news is that fuel economy also plummets to around 39 mpg, and because this petrol has a smaller fuel tank, if you go on a really long journey down to the south of France or somewhere, you will be stopping quite a bit more often for fuel. If you need to pull anything, it's also worth knowing that this petrol has a maximum towing limit of 1,800 kilos, whereas the diesel can pull 2 tons. There is one pretty big reason you might want to stick with the petrol though, and I'll let you know what that is a bit later on. Anyway, if those engines sound a little too sensible, you might want to wait for the S6 version that's expected to arrive next year. It will likely use the same basic 3-litre V6 petrol engine as the smaller S5, but with power boosted to more than 400 bhp. And there will be an even more powerful RS6 version too, because we've already seen some spy shots. That will probably be a plug-in hybrid like its main rival, the BMW M5, and it could use the 4-litre V8 petrol engine from the Porsche Cayenne Turbo E hybrid. If that's the case, it will have more than 700 brake horsepower. And don't forget, there will also be a fully electric RS e-tron, which is likely to have similar running gear to the new Porsche Macan Turbo Electric, perhaps with even more power. 2 more sensible plug-in hybrid versions are also on the way, one with 295 bhp and the other with 362. You might want to wait for those if you're a company car driver looking to keep your monthly tax bill down. Right, brief interlude for a massive rain shower, but it has eased off a little bit. So it's time to talk about arguably the most important thing about this car, and that is the boot. This is one of the biggest estate cars around, of course, so there's a good chance that if you're thinking about buying one, it's because you need to carry around lots of stuff. Now, there are three ways to open the boot. You can use this key fob here. You can, of course, press a button on the tailgate itself, or the third option is to wave your foot under the boot here where a light is beamed onto the floor. It's a little bit temperamental, to be honest, but at least you know roughly where to put your foot. And if you get it right, as I did there, then the boot will open. Inside, it's perhaps a little bit disappointing that there is around 10% less space, officially at least, than there was in the old A6. So there is 503 litres of space below this electrically retracting tonneau cover there. A BMW 5 Series Touring, that has a 570 litre boot, and a Mercedes E-Class Estate, officially, that has 615 litres of luggage space. Now, often the official figures don't tell the whole story, but it is pretty clear that this has a smaller boot than its two main rivals. And actually, things get even worse if you go for the diesel version, because that mild hybrid battery sits under the boot floor, so you lose around 7% of luggage space again. So officially, that has slightly less space than the Audi A5 Avant, which is obviously a smaller car. But it isn't as though you're not going to be able to go on a family holiday in this car. It still has a very long boot, and if you need to carry more and you don't have passengers in the car, then you can fold down those 40, 20, 40 split folding rear seats by pulling these handles here on the boot. But while the boot isn't amazing for such a huge estate, absolutely no complaints about rear space. So this seat here in front is set up for my driving position. I'm just over 6 feet tall, and as you can see, loads of knee room and plenty of headroom too. Even foot space actually is pretty good. And because these seats are quite supportive, I would be plenty comfortable on a really long journey back here. I probably wouldn't be though if I was sitting in the middle here, because this enormous transmission tunnel really does get in the way, so I'd have to straddle that. Fine to carry 3 people in the back on a short journey, but if you're going a long way, this car is probably best for 2. Now, in the front of the new A6, there are plenty of good things to talk about, starting with the driving position. So, there is loads of adjustment. These seats are very supportive, and on this left-hand drive version at least, the steering wheel, the pedals, the seat, they all line up very well with one another. So I could sit here all day long and be extremely comfortable. The design of the interior is pretty similar to a lot of other modern Audis, like the Q6 e-tron, for example. So you've got this big display that's curved towards the driver, and a single piece of glass actually covers 2 screens, an 11.9-inch one behind the steering wheel here for the digital instruments, that's called a virtual cockpit, and then towards the centre of the dashboard there is a 14.5-inch touchscreen. Now this touchscreen is high up, it's easy to see, it's quick to respond, and the menu system is pretty intuitive. We would prefer a separate rotary controller like you get in a BMW 5 Series, because that would mean you don't have to worry about pressing icons, especially the smaller ones where you're driving along, but fewer and fewer cars are coming with one of those now, so really, by touchscreen standards, this is actually very good. And you might have noticed there is another display on that side of the dashboard. In the UK at least, that can only be had if you go for range topping edition 1 trim. You can't add it as an option to the cheaper trim levels, and it is a 10.9-inch touchscreen for your passengers, so they can control a lot of the infotainment functions, which, depending on who they are, you'll find either extremely annoying or extremely useful. That passenger can even watch a movie while you're driving along, although you won't be able to see it from this side of the car because this screen is polarised, and that is probably a good thing. It is annoying that there are no physical aircon controls, so to adjust the interior temperature or operate other air conditioning functions, you have to use this touchscreen here. Some of the icons, they are permanently on display at the bottom of the screen, but they are quite small, although you can also use the voice control system. I have so far found that quite temperamental, but I'll give it a chance to showcase its skills now. So here we go. Hey Audi. Hey Audi. Hey Audi.
Hi, what can I do for you?
Please set the interior temperature to 22 degrees.
I'll set the temperature to 22 degrees.
So as long as you haven't got kids screaming away in the back there, that voice control system can, some of the time at least, help out, although it would just be simpler if you had a dial here you could twist. Anyway, something else worth mentioning is actually something this car doesn't have, and that is a switchable transparency glass roof. It is a £2,400 option in the UK, and it means that you can immediately, digitally, either change the glass roof from opaque to transparent. And you don't have to do the whole thing in one go, because there are actually 9 different sections to the roof, and you can activate or deactivate as many of them as you want to. So it's a bit like a digital blind, and we've seen very similar technology in the latest Renault Scenic. Now, you might be getting a bit bored with us saying how amazing Audi interiors used to be and how they've taken a bit of a downturn for quality. But the truth is, a few years ago, you would buy an Audi knowing that it would have a better interior than an equivalent BMW or Mercedes. And with this new A6, that isn't the case. That doesn't mean this interior is bad. There are some soft touch materials up here on top of the dashboard. Some of the harder plastics on the dashboard lower down are at least covered with some faux suede, or Dynamica as Audi calls it. But there are a few too many hard plastics on display for my liking. So around the air vents here, that isn't particularly nice. And okay, you're probably not going to be touching that very often, but you will. This storage area around the central armrest here, that isn't particularly nice either. So overall, the 5 Series does feel a little better made inside, a little bit more upmarket, but the difference isn't huge. So as I mentioned earlier, this is the entry-level 2-litre petrol, and performance is fine. It will do 0 to 60 in just over 8 seconds if you need it to. But you do need to work it quite hard when you want to accelerate quickly, and when you do that, it sounds a little bit coarse. So it's not ideally suited to a big, fairly luxurious estate like this. But when you are driving around town or you're cruising at 70 miles an hour on the motorway, then it's very smooth, it's quiet, so it's definitely up to the job. And comfort is really impressive, particularly at high speeds on the motorway, but even on these mountain country roads, which aren't that well finished in places, this is very smooth, very well controlled. Now in the UK, if you go for S-Line trim, which this car is, then you get sport suspension. But this is a German registered car, even though we're testing it in Portugal, and it is fitted with standard suspension, which in the UK you only get with entry-level sport trim. And it handles more than well enough. The steering is accurate, it's nicely weighted. Yes, there's a bit of body lean on these mountain roads, but not too much, and really given the type of car this is and the buyer that it's aimed at, I'm not sure that the sport suspension, which is 20 millimeters lower and stiffens the car up, is really going to help things. We can't try that today though. There is, however, a third air suspension option, and to try that we need to swap to a diesel car. Okay, so let's start with the air suspension, which in the UK you can only have with Range Topping Edition 1 trim and this mild hybrid diesel engine, and even then you have to pay £1,755 extra, which is a lot of money. The good news is though, comfort is very good. Roughly, I would say it's on a par with the standard suspension in the Petrol we tried earlier, and that's despite this car having 21-inch alloys and the Petrol having smaller 20s. And with air suspension, it's not just about comfort, because if I switch to dynamic mode, it just stiffens the car up and helps keep the body more upright through corners. What about this mild hybrid engine? Well, it is much stronger at low revs than the Petrol. You don't just have the diesel engine, you have some assistance from an electric motor, of course. And ultimately, when you put your foot down hard, acceleration is noticeably stronger. It's also a very quiet engine, for a diesel at least. So overall, it is definitely better suited to the A6 than the Petrol. So the new A6 Avant can't carry quite as much luggage as a 5 Series Touring, but it's still a really practical estate. It's packed with tech, and in entry-level petrol form, it undercuts its 2 big rivals on price. I'd actually say this diesel version is the one to go for though. You do lose a bit of boot space, but it's really only underfloor storage. And when you factor in its much better performance and fuel economy, it really is worth the extra. Thanks for watching this review. If you want to watch another one, click up there. And for our full detailed written review on the new Audi A6 Avant, click there.